Hi everybody, welcome to an introduction to synthesis. So, quick overview, there are two types of synthesis. The first one that we are going to be focusing on this year is explanatory synthesis. Some important information about, let me get my pen here. Explanatory synthesis is that it helps you to understand a topic. You are dividing a subject into component parts, so into different sections. Okay, the goal is a clear and orderly fashion. Let's see if this goes. The purpose is not to argue. Okay, just presenting facts. Okay, just presenting facts. There's not a lot of commentary in explanatory thesis. It's just what exactly is in the sources, and that is what you're focusing on. You're just combining the information from two or more sources. An argumentative, I don't need that. An argumentative synthesis is where you are presenting your own point of view. You are still combining the research from multiple sources, okay, but you are also adding the addition of your own point of view. Your thesis is debatable, it is defensible, you could make an argument, you could create a debate from that. People might not agree with you, people might agree with you, and even if you have the same source materials, you could use those in multiple ways to support different claims. So just a quick overview of the two examples of synthesis. I'm going to give you 10 seconds, restate what's the difference between an explanatory and argumentative synthesis. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hey, quick overview. Purpose of synthesis is to revise our thinking, to become more aware of what information is available, to create a deeper understanding of information, hopefully creating some sort of new meaning. Why do we use it? I need to change my notes here. Okay. There are two reasons why we are going to use it in honors and seminar. The first one is that it is one way of creating a research product. Anytime we do a research, even if it's just in your everyday lives, you are pulling information from different sources to help you create that understanding. How this might look, or two different ways rather this will look in our class, is one, I will give you specific sources, so usually 4 to 6 sources, and then you have to create your understanding using just those sources and creating your argument, your position, pulling those ideas as your base and then building off of them. Another way that we will do this in class is that you will either individually or as a group come up with a specific topic, a specific focus, and then you will go out and find the research that you are going to combine to create an understanding for the rest of us, your readers, your audience. Okay, some steps that we're going to go through here as a practice. Just as we're going through and we're starting off, we're only going to use 2 sources at first. Once we add in 3 or more sources, this organizer doesn't really work. This is, again, just kind of creating an understanding. So specifically when we get into some of our larger research tasks or activities, this might be something you do to kind of create and establish your understanding right away at the beginning. So the first thing we're going to do is look at the first article, look at the text structure, look at the pictures, what do we notice, and our end goal is going to be to create possible categories. Okay, so the first text is from Bryan Stevenson, or about Bryan Stevenson. It's from 2020. It's from Contemporary Black Biography. The publisher is Gale, so it's a database source. It's a biography, so that tells me that it's probably going to be chronologically organized, just because biographies usually go from the beginning of a person's life to wherever they are. And because there's only a born date of 1959 and no other dates involved, I'm going to go with Bryan Stevenson is currently still alive. Text number 1 is fairly long but squished in there. Okay, and I'm going to read it out loud to you as you are going. We're going to break it up. What are some specific categories that you might choose? So, called America's Nelson Mandela, Bryan Stevenson is a talented and tireless defender of the poorest and most vulnerable people in the United States criminal justice system, especially African Americans, minors, and mentally disabled. Okay, so that tells me that Bryan Stevenson is probably our main person because his name is right away in the first sentence, even if we didn't know that from the title of the text. I know that he defends the poor and vulnerable in the U.S. justice system. And then I have some specifics of who he has helped. Stevenson's nonprofit legal organization, the Equal Justice Initiative, EJI, founded in 1989, has prevented the deaths of more than 100 prisoners and persuaded the U.S. Supreme Court to end life sentences without parole for minors as young as 13. Okay, that one tells me that we have a nonprofit legal organization, so it's not that he is making the big bucks here. Equal Justice Initiative, it's relatively well established. It's been around for 31 years. It's prevented deaths, a lot of deaths, considering with the number 100 there. And it's persuaded to end life sentences without parole. So a good kind of talking about the impact there of some of his work. Stevenson is also the author of Just Mercy, A Story of Justice and Redemption from 2014, which Tim Adams of the London Guardian called a powerful, profoundly affecting memoir documenting the policy of mass incarceration, the barely credible inhumanity that has seen young boys kept in solitary confinement for years and decades, and the evidence of institutional racism at the heart of the American justice system. Okay, we also know that he wrote a book. It was really profoundly affecting, so it affected a lot of people. It talks about policy of mass incarceration, which means mass imprisonment, the inhumanities of that, and then talking about the institutional racism that is part of the justice system. And then 2019, powerful memoir turned into a film. I can infer that means that this book links back to the profound and powerful part of the memoir, because it has been turned into a movie, so more people can get awareness of this situation, of this person's life. So going through some things that I might go through for categorizing, it's a lot about just him and kind of things he's done over his career or things that he does. So I might call this maybe just overview, background information, basic facts, something along those lines. Okay, and you've already read, hopefully, this article. So go back through, take about 15 seconds or so. Okay, go through, say out loud, what would each of the other paragraphs be categorized as? So we started off with kind of basic information and career. How does it build with each paragraph? And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm gonna skip forward real quick. Okay. So right now, some of the ideas that we might have basic, I can't spell, facts, career, and you might have different categories than I do. This one is probably early childhood, looking at both the born in and then talking about his dad. The next paragraph is looking at, I would say it's a continuation of family, kind of transition from just growing up to what are some of his family members like. And then the last part, you could make an argument that he's still talking about family, but you could also say that he is, you could branch it out to like family's impact or something similar. Okay? Now, what you do is you read Article 2, and before you take any notes, you go back through and you double check, do those categories work? Okay? So we've gone through, we've already read this, I'm not going to read it out to you. Again, the things that we kind of worked with, we have kind of, here's our early childhood, roughly. as this is an excerpt from the introduction of the memoir, it's not as organized as the biography is. Then I think then I might go with actually those full paragraphs maybe as the family piece, and then these last sections as the impact. Okay? Not all the time are these categories going to line up. If that ever happens, you just go back through and you change what your categories are. How does it fit both of the texts? Then, let's see if we can, are we going to zoom? Are we going to not zoom? Let's see. Seriously? Keep your annotations. Okay, we'll go from here. Okay, so sample notes. As you go through, once you have the categories, then you go through and then you annotate. This sample is included later on in the assessment that you are watching. But go back through, double check. Text 1, you're going to have a lot of information in text 1. Is it going to animate for me? There we go. Text 2, you'll notice that there's a couple of just blue check marks, okay? The biggest thing is, if you already have that information down once, do you need it to write it down again? No. The blue check mark just means that that's the same information. So most of what I have in my text 2 column is new information, additional information, things that I didn't know before reading. Things that I didn't know before reading text 2. Okay? So going through from the sample notes then, okay, again, really detailed. Your goal is just to kind of see and combine. For example, and one thing to note, sorry, I'm flopping, I'm losing my train of thought here. The overview and importance section wasn't really in the second text, okay? I'm not going to necessarily discount that because I did get a lot of information about who Bryan Stevenson was. Maybe when I'm writing about it, I'll come up with that information a little bit later, and I'm just going to start with growing up. Okay, that's a personal choice. How are you going to go through and organize that? Once you have those sample notes, you go through. I'll flip-flop again. So I'm going to take that first column, or that first row rather, okay, and that's going to be a paragraph. I'm just going to go through an overview. What's the important information? And notice that for the most part, forgot quotes there, unapologetically. For the most part, it's my own wording, so I don't have to worry about direct quotes or anything like that. Okay, so each row becomes a paragraph here. So let's take a look at what that looks like. So my sample paragraph, Bryan Stevenson is a criminal lawyer specializing in defending the poor and vulnerable. In law school, he felt an overwhelming distance, a disconnect which led him to his focus. The first line, straight from my text 1 chart. The second one is one of the very final, kind of like the impact section that didn't really go with the impact. I thought it was more dealing with his career because it was talking about him in law school. So I moved it up to this first paragraph. Okay. He founded a nonprofit organization called the Equal Justice Institute. I think it's supposed to be initiative, which has so far prevented the deaths of over 100 people and persuaded the U.S. Supreme Court to end multiple life without parole sentences. So clearly I didn't proofread this before I sent it out to you. He wrote the memoir of his experiences focusing on the injustices of mass incarceration and institutional racism. So if I go back to my first column here, I talk about Bryan Stevenson, I talk about him being a defender of the poor, the distance in law school, I talk about the nonprofit, and I still spelled it wrong there. I talk about what the nonprofit has done, and then do I talk about Just Mercy? Did I forget about that part? Okay, I talk about the memoir, but I didn't name it, so I might go back and double check that. I'm talking about the mass incarceration one. Okay, so as you go through, as you're reading, just check them off. What do you cover? What do you not cover? What do you remember? I decided that 1989 wasn't really important, so I didn't write about it. Okay, and then I do the same thing with my other columns. So your final task here is you are going to have two different texts about Breonna Taylor. And what you're going to do is read through those texts, keep a running tally. It can be on your iPad, it can be on your notebook, but what facts does each article give you? Okay, what are some different categories of information that they give you? Okay, the first question is going to be just what information does Article 1 give you? The second question is what information does Article 2 give you? And then what new information does Article 2 give you? And then the final question here is, what do both articles tell you? So combining that information, giving me an overview of the grand jury recordings from Breonna Taylor and what you found out from them, or what everybody found out from them. Okay? If you have any questions, let me know. Thanks, everybody.